One of the unique things about our Christian faith is that we are, to the best of my knowledge, the only religion that proclaims that God, in and through Jesus, became a human being. The Creator, in Jesus, became a creature. As we read in John's Gospel, the Word became flesh. That was an idea that was so fascinating to Francis of Assisi. So St. Francis thought about that a lot. It was an idea he took from, I think, St. Paul's letter to the Philippians, that though he was in the form of God, he did not deem equality with God something to be grasped at, but rather he emptied himself. And he came among us, born one like us, and experienced everything that we experienced, even unto death. When Francis thought about that, he said, wow, he said, God was humble. God was willing to let go. God was willing, in and through Jesus, to empty himself. And Francis thought God was humble. I think that's an idea we don't often think about as well. And when Francis understood that, he said, I have to do the same thing in my own life. That's why he lived a life of simplicity and poverty and humility, because he wanted to do in his own life what he saw God doing for all of us in and through Jesus. He wanted to empty himself. And so he gave away everything that he had. He gave away his fine clothes. He stripped naked before the bishop, and he said, no longer will I say our Father, Pietro Berdononi, but simply our Father who art in heaven. He got rid of the fine horse that he was riding on. And he just lived a life of total and complete humility and poverty and simplicity, because he saw God doing that in and through Jesus. And he said, that's the key. And I want to do the same thing. He saw things like that in the birth of Jesus. St. Francis is famous for kind of promoting the nativity, Christmas crib, because in a little town of Greccio, he dramatized the Christmas story. But what he wanted the people to notice was the humility and the simplicity of Jesus, who was born in a stable. He saw that same kind of dynamic in the Eucharist as well. He has a phrase, he says, he was just awed that God would hide under the form of bread in the Eucharist. You know, God would humble himself to do that. And he saw that most clearly on the cross, that Jesus on the cross emptied himself, gave himself totally. He didn't cling to his own life. It was all about God, Jesus being humble, emptying himself. Francis also, I think, had this intuition, this insight too, that because God came among us, because God came to be one of us in and through Jesus, that then all creation is holy. All creation is sacred. All creation is a gift, something to be cared for. And he received it all as gift. He didn't want to possess it or cling to it. He wanted to use it gratefully and to share it generously, especially with the poor, because it was not his. It's not ours. I like to think that St. Francis in his life kind of paints a living picture of what he thought was going on in the mind and the heart and the life of God. And he has another beautiful phrase. He says, don't hold back anything of yourself for yourself, but give yourself totally, and he will receive you totally, because he gave himself totally. That dynamic of giving and receiving. God didn't hold back. God didn't cling, but God emptied himself to become one of us in this beautiful, beautiful world. And I think Francis understood that's how we should live. so should we. A life of simplicity, poverty, humility, respecting and caring for creation, which shows us the wonderful goodness of God. I think Francis gives us an opportunity to think about how we appreciate this world in which we live, how we use our possessions. Do I think of them as mine to hoard, or are they perhaps gifts to share, especially with those most in need? So gracious God, I thank you for the insight that the life of Francis gives to us about who you are and what you want to do for us, and the inspiration that he gives us about how that we can live. So may we hold our possessions lightly, and may we share them generously. Amen.